Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Dinesh and you're watching Indie Acres. So guys, this is going to be the second episode in the permaculture basic series that we have been creating. In the previous episode, we have seen few aspects related to human well-being and also understood the role and significance of our natural environment and natural ecosystems in particular in contributing to our human well-being, and also how the knowledge of permaculture design can help us in building those natural ecosystems in our farms, gardens and backyards to fulfill human needs while causing no disruption to the natural world. So that's a bit of a recap that we have done here, and if you have not watched the previous episode, I will leave a link to that on the screen and in the description box as well. Right? So, and now that we understood the role of natural ecosystems in human well-being, it's time to move further and learn more about these natural ecosystems, and more importantly, in this episode, we are going to understand the one and only prime directive of permaculture. So without further delay, let's get into it. Now, what is an ecosystem? I have introduced it a bit in the first session, but here I want to elaborate on this concept. So now if you observe the word ecosystem, it's a combination of two words, eco and system. The word eco is a combining word that refers to anything that is related to environment or nature. So literally, the word eco means natural or environmental. And the second word, system, literally mean an integrated set of things working together to perform a certain function. For a better understanding, our human body is a system. All our body parts and organs are integrated in a specific pattern to perform several functions. So that's a system. And a computer is also a system. It has these several components that are integrated in a specific pattern to perform different functions. Right? Now, both these words together, an ecosystem is an integrated set of natural things working together to perform certain functions. In other words, an ecosystem is a community of living things, naturally living things that interact with each other and also with the non-living things around them. Now, the living things in an ecosystem are called biotic elements. That's the term we use for living elements. So those things that have life in it are called biotic elements. Trees, plants, animals, birds, insects, microorganisms, and even humans are biotic elements of an ecosystem. And on the other hand, those non-living things in an ecosystem are called abiotic elements. So these are dead elements. They don't have life in them, such as air, water, inorganic minerals, etc. Our planet Earth is nothing but a combination of several ecosystems, right? We have different types of forest ecosystems. We have boreal forests, rainforests, temperate forests, alpine forests and savannas, right? And so each of these forest ecosystems has a different set of living and non-living things interacting with each other. And we have several types of desert ecosystems. In deserts, we see different set of animals, right? Such as camels, lizards, and other reptiles, right? So these biotic elements will be interacting with the abiotic environment of a particular ecosystem. And we also have marine ecosystems. World's largest ecosystems are our oceans, right? We have different types of surface water ecosystems such as rivers and different types of lakes, ponds and other surface water ecosystems. So, but these are just a few, and all these ecosystems together make the biosphere of the planet. So now, what is biosphere? Let's just go back to our school days and try to recollect few things that our biology teacher had taught us back then, right? So it's okay even if you don't remember or don't want to recollect those old memories, I'll help you here, right? So if you remember, we have learned that the area near the surface of the earth is surrounded by 4 different layers, right? Such as lithosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere and biosphere. So these are the 4 layers that surrounds the surface of the earth. Now lithosphere is nothing but this solid outer part of the earth where we have all these rocks, dirt and soil, right? So this part, this layer of this earth is called lithosphere. And secondly, we have hydrosphere, which is nothing but water. Our oceans, rivers, lakes and other small water bodies makes this layer. And then thirdly, we have this atmosphere, which is nothing but air that is surrounding the earth. We have oxygen and other gases in this layer. And lastly, this region, this particular region where all living things live, where all life habits. So this region is called a biosphere. So we have plants, animals, insects, birds, humans and all other life forms living and interacting with their environment is called a biosphere. So here all these living elements interact with other 3 layers to form ecosystems. So the sum of all these ecosystems on earth is called biosphere. We have forest ecosystems, we have marine ecosystems, we have desert ecosystems, and in all these ecosystems we see diverse life forms with their diverse interactions which all together make our biosphere, right? And the study of these ecosystems is called ecology. In simple words, it's the study of life on planet Earth, right? Ecology is nothing but study of life on this planet. And the study of interactions between the life and its surrounding environment is called an ecosystem, right? So I think now we are clear with the terminology that we are using in this course, right? So now for a better understanding, let's study a simple ecosystem, a very simple one. A pot with a plant in it. Most of us in our houses will have at least one small pot with a plant in it, right? So you don't have to go to a forest or a desert or a lake to understand an ecosystem. Just go and take a closer look at this potted plant. Just observe what are all the things in it, right? So superficially, if you observe, firstly you will see the pot made of mud, cement or plastic that has a defined boundary, right? Then you will see this plant. It could be any plant, a small flowering plant or a tomato plant. Let's think it's a tomato plant, right? And then you will see this soil. Plants need a medium to grow, right? So we have this little soil in this pot. And now if you observe closely, you will also find these little insects, bugs, small ants, big ants moving around in the soil. And you may also find some little insects living on this plant, just hiding under these leaves or crawling on this plant. So those are few things you see from outside, right? So superficially you can see all these things happening in that pot ecosystem. And now if you just pull this plant out of this pot and take a look at what is inside, you will find a different set of insects and worms living inside the soil. And some of them living in the root zone of this plant. So now just try to take a handful of soil from that pot and take a look at that soil. Don't worry, those insects are not going to eat you, right? So if you start listing all these things that you have come across now, you have a living plant interacting with this non-living dirt, and this plant also interacts with other non-living stuff like air, water and other things around it, right? And you have these insects interacting with the plant and also with their peers and other non-living things around them. So overall, we see living things interacting among themselves and also with the non-living things around them in a closed space, right? So we see these vertical and horizontal interactions taking place in this system. So when one species interacts with its own species, it is called horizontal interaction. For example, take small ants in this pot, right? Let's think that there are some small ants in this pot. So every ant interacts with the other ants to perform specific function. They live in communities, they make love with each other to produce babies, and the matured ones, daddy and mummy ants, they work together to feed their babies. So that's another kind of horizontal interaction. They fight with other rowdy ants for food and space, right? So that's also a kind of a horizontal interaction. So these are all the horizontal interactions between living things. On the other hand, when one species interacts with other species, it's called a vertical interaction. Simply, when human interacts to a dog, right, that's a vertical interaction. When human interacts with other human being, that's a horizontal interaction. So coming to vertical interaction, in this pot ecosystem, for example, when big ants kills and eats these small ants, that's a vertical interaction. One species interacting with another species. When these ants feeds on leaves of this plant, that's also a kind of vertical interaction. One species interacting with other species. So when these ants kills and feeds on other small living species, that's also a vertical interaction. So this is how the population of any one single species will be in control at any given point of time in a natural ecosystem, right? So this predation and these interactions will keep the population in check in any natural ecosystem. And now at the other end of the scale, these living things not only interact with other life forms but also interact with their non-living environment. So all these living elements need air, light, water and minerals to sustain their life, right? Just like us, we need air, sunlight and water to live, right? So similarly, all other living beings need non-living elements to sustain their life. So they play, they pee, they defecate, and finally one day they die. And in all these actions, they create value, right? Their pee and feces becomes the nutrient-rich fertilizer, right? And when they die, their dead bodies decompose, and in that process, they become food for other microorganisms in the ecosystem. So this is how a healthy ecosystem works. This becomes a whole self-regulating system. Self-regulation is one of the most important property of any natural ecosystems. They don't need external forces to work upon them, right? Or to function, right? So they are self-regulating. So in any self-regulating natural ecosystem, population is balanced. Nutrients are recycled. The climate is regulated. The disease is controlled, and water is regulated, and the waste is recycled. But how? So we'll understand about each of these mechanisms in the upcoming sessions in detail. So for now, let's see what happens when one living species is removed from this ecosystem, right? Let's see what happens when an ecosystem is disturbed. Let's say that you love these big ants very much and you want to domesticate them, and you want to take them home and domesticate them, right? So you have removed these big ants from this pot and started domesticating them in a clean glass house at your home, right? So now these big ants are missing in this pot ecosystem. Now coming back to this pot, those big ants, those anteaters who are supposed to eat the small ants and keep their population in control, when went missing, the small ant population will now start increasing, and at one point when all the food in the soil is gone, they will either start eating this plant or starve to death, right? And now if they eat this tomato plant, the ecosystem will collapse, right? So the purpose is gone. Or if they die and become extinct, other insects and microorganisms that are dependent on these small ants will also perish. And when life starts perishing, this ecosystem collapses and becomes a desert, right? So what do we call a system with no life, no water and no food? It's called a desert. And now let's see what happens to our domesticated ants, to our pet ants, right? So you will feed these ants, you will feed them, and at one point their population will burst, which in turn will either spread disease, or these ant populations will run out of space. Or you may try to control or nurture them as per your needs by giving external inputs that costs you money. And you will feed these ants, you will spray chemicals to control disease if any. So by isolating a life form from a self-regulated whole natural ecosystem, we are promoting collapse and destruction, which in turn will cost you resources and money. And Masanobu Fukuoka is a great philosopher. In his book One Straw Revolution, interestingly explained this abnormal human behavior, right? So generally human being will have this tampering behavior. It's a kind of a tendency to interfere with things that are going well, and in that process of interference they cause damage to that system and then leave it unrepaired. And now when that damaged system starts showing adverse signs and effects, this human will start working very hard to correct the situation, right? And when those corrective actions appear to be successful, then he or she come to view these measures as splendid accomplishments. Right? For example, there is this house with a roof made of tiles, right? And a man is living in it, right? So one day he felt very excited that he climbed on this roof and started dancing, and during which some tiles on this roof got broken and damaged. And now when one day it rained heavily, this roof started to leak. It started leaking, and that became a problem for this man. And then he quickly climbs up to repair the damage, and in the end, with great joy, he feels that he had accomplished a miraculous solution. So if you see here, he created a problem, he tampered with the thing that is going well, and then when problem arose, he repaired the thing, and he felt, and with great joy, he felt that he had accomplished a miraculous solution to the problem. Right. Another example that Fukuoka quoted in this book is that once there was this scientist who worked very hard, spending day and night reading books and stuff, which strained his eyes and got him nearsightedness. Right. So he got this eyesight problem by reading too much. Right. He's a scientist. Right. He reads a lot of books. So he got this eyesight problem due to straining his eyes. And if you wonder what on earth he has been working on all this time, is to become the inventor of eyeglasses to correct the problem of nearsightedness. So all this time he has been working hard to invent eyeglasses. So that's how human behavior tend to be, right? And if you observe, the same thing happened to this pot ecosystem today. This ecosystem, which used to be healthy and self-regulating whole system, which when tampered will now need external inputs in the form of synthetic fertilizers and chemical sprays. So its condition will be now like a person in an ICU, right? Right. So without external inputs, the system now can't sustain on its own. And remember, anything that costs you resources and money is unsustainable. That's not going to sustain for a very long time. Just think about all the material things we use today. Cars, TVs, washing machines, all these things, they need external inputs to sustain, right? Without which they are useless to us. And humans are no exception. And this is happening today to us, right, to humans. So what is happening? All man-made ecosystems can't sustain without external inputs, right? So all our agricultural farmlands, our botanical gardens, forest plantations, our cities, towns, all these are man-made ecosystems. They can't sustain without external inputs. We need tons of chemical fertilizers and pesticides to grow our basic needs, right? We need huge amounts of electricity and fossil fuels to manage our systems, and we need huge amounts of water and other resources to maintain these systems. And how did all this happen? So to understand that, if you go back to few million years into the history, ancient man used to be a part of this natural ecosystem, right? So that's the time when our ancestors were still using their four limbs to walk, right? Just like ape human, right? So as time progressed and the process of evolution, we started walking with two legs. And that's when our two limbs got freed and became our hands. right? Now we got two hands and we are walking on two legs. And then using these hands, we started making things. We removed ourselves from the natural world and placed ourselves in these man-made boxes of towns and cities, and we named it modern civilization. So to establish these cities and towns, we had destroyed thousands of acres of forest land. We killed millions of trees and thousands of animals living in those forests. These man-made cities and towns became our new ecosystems. These are man-made ecosystems where we continued making things, right? We started building houses, thousands of them. We made tools, we made baskets, we made electricity, we made batteries, we made plastic, we made cars, we made cell phones, toys, clothes, footwear, belts, cement, machines, houses, and what else? We made plenty of things. There are hell lot of things all around us. We have been making things and we will continue to make things, and all we can do is make things. Many of us might think that we create things, but the truth is we just assemble the resources, right? We just take different resources from different places and just assemble them and make things. So we are not creating anything, we are just making, we are just doing an assembly job. Creation is very much different from making, and the only thing we create is other human beings. The only thing that is natural today about human being is making love and producing babies, and rest is all that we make. And we consider making things is intelligence, and so we consider human species as the top predator. It's only because we make things. But the real human intelligence will come into picture when you are left alone with no tools in a dark forest. So with this making wala intelligence, I don't think we could be able to survive in a forest for at least one night, because in no time some animal will eat us and will be dead and become part of the forest ecosystem, right? Now that sounds kind of negative, right? But making is not a bad thing. Making things is not bad at all, right? On the brighter side, human survival is dependent on our making skills, right? Every living thing has its own survival technique, right? Similarly, the existence and continuation of human species is very much dependent on our making skills, right? That's the only thing we do very well, right? We don't have good senses like other animals, and we can't move very fast, and we are pretty weak physically when you compare ourselves with other animals, right? But the only thing we are good at is making. We have got these two hands to make things. We make tools, we make machines, right? But the real problem with this making skill is that we use it too much. We are using this skill, this making skill too much. We make too many things which after certain use becomes a waste. Be it toys that our children play, or shoes that we wear, or cell phones, computers, or any other thing for that matter. Where will all this waste go? Why do we need 10 pairs of shoes? One for office, one for running, one for parties. Do we really need these many things? We always think about buying more things and consuming more things. We always consume. Have you ever thought about disposing or reusing them? Where will all this waste go? Will you throw it in oceans? Will you throw it in forests? Is there any proper established disposal mechanism in place? We have thousands of factories making these things. And how many factories do we have to recycle these things? Almost none. And we are in an assumption that our natural ecosystems will clear our waste, will clean our waste. No, they will not. They will simply reject and throw it back on our face. Then who will take the responsibility for the waste we produce? Who will take the responsibility for the waste our children produce? Who will take the responsibility of our self-destructive actions? It's time to question ourselves, but not the authorities. We don't have to question the authorities, not the politicians and not the policymakers. We have been asking them for a very long time, but there is no answer because there is no answer. No one can answer this question. Are we seeking their permission to make and buy all these things? No, right? We don't ask our authorities to buy these things, right? So then it's better to question ourselves. And if we hesitate to ask now, our future generations will start questioning us, just like this Western kid did a few days back.
How dare you! How dare you! How dare you!
Yep. How dare are we to steal the dreams of our future generations? How dare are we to destroy the well-being of our future generations? So it's time to question ourselves and take a decision. And the only ethical decision is to take the responsibility for our own existence and that of our children. So that's the only ethical decision we can take. So that decision becomes the prime directive of permaculture. In permaculture, we take a whole systems thinking approach. Here we design and make things in such a way that after considerable use, they get recycled. We create our own complex living environments that generate no waste at all. In any healthy natural ecosystem, if you see, energy is absorbed, it is used, it gets recycled and transferred. It never gets lost or wasted. Produce no waste, right? This is one of the 12 principles of permaculture. These principles and ethical decisions are not man-made, right? They are found in nature, and all we need to do is observe the nature and natural ecosystems and learn from them. So our responsibility now is to find ways to return this shit we made and bought all these days in the most ethical ways possible. Not by burning, not by landfilling, or not by throwing it away. And if we did it the unethical way, it will come back to us and our children in the form of food we eat, in the form of water we drink, and in the form of air we breathe. Our authorities won't take this responsibility. Our taxes don't clean our dirty work. We is the answer. And we is the only answer. And now it's our decision to either take it or leave it and let our future generations suffer. And of course, that's not an easy decision to make. I agree. This is not something that can be done overnight. But can we discuss the problem? Can we talk to our kids and family about the problem? Can we at least acknowledge the problem? Yeah, there is a problem. Can we at least acknowledge it? Don't wait for politicians, authorities, or media to talk about it. There is enough evidence all over the place. Just read this State of India's Environment 2019 General. Right. Every year gets published in the month of February or March. Right. So people are silent. That doesn't mean that we don't feel the pain. The pain that we and our actions are inflicting on ourselves can now be assessed and expressed in the form of facts and figures. Just try to read these figures and facts. that are published every year. And every country has its own kind of thing. Right, so the only reason we are silent now is because we either got used to that pain or someone else is taking it now on our behalf. And soon it will knock the doors of ours and our children's, right? So, okay, I will leave it there. And if you wish to read and learn more about ecology and ecosystems, this is a good resource for self-study. And if you need any version of this book, you can write to me at indieacres19@gmail.com. I can send you the e-copy of this book free of cost. So that's it for this episode. I will meet you in the next episode with another topic. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Dinesh and you're watching Indie Acres.